Hello. I often get comments and posts on my social media platforms saying how Christianity influenced pagan religions and introduced the idea of rebirth. So today we're going to talk about how heaven and hell came to be, as in the biblical versions of heaven and hell, the real story, and I'll do a video soon about the resurrection of Jesus Christ so we can address these comments and potential misconceptions by some of you. Now, if this sounds interesting to hear this, then please subscribe to the channel. It just requires you to press the subscribe button down there. It means a lot to me and encourages me to make more videos, and well as allow these videos to be seen by a wider audience, which can only be a good thing. So welcome to the story of heaven and hell, and welcome to probably a few other Christianity type myth busting things along the way, and welcome to Crecganford. The Abrahamic religions are a group of religions that include Judaism, Christianity and Islam, and you could argue that Islam evolved from Christianity and Christianity from Judaism. And so our story should start with a synopsis of Judaism. This is the religion of the Jews, and it's about 4,000 years old, and that makes Judaism one of the oldest monotheistic religions in the world today, a religion that believes in a single God, and it was established in the Eastern Mediterranean. And to understand the Jewish story, we must look at their religious texts to see what they say, and more importantly, what they do not say. Unlike Christians who believe in the New Testament of the Bible, Jews do not. Jews do believe in the Old Testament of the Bible, and so rather than refer to it as the Old Testament, they refer to it as the Tanakh, and that's a name that is made up of the parts that make it up. So the books of the Tanakh are the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. And out of these three parts, Torah is considered the most sacred. It consists of five parts, 5 books from the Bible, and these are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers and Deuteronomy. And it is the history contained within these stories of the Torah that we need to look into. Now, the Torah talks about creation and then Abraham, the man who the Abrahamic religions refer. And he is said to have been born around 1999 BCE, so about 4,000 years ago. And in the Bible, Abraham's God asks him to travel from Ur in the ancient land of Mesopotamia to Canaan, which is roughly where Israel and Palestine are today. I refer to him as Abraham's God, as no one can say God's name. I mean, many Orthodox Jews will not say or write his name or anything that represents their God's name, but for those who aren't Orthodox Jews, you can't say his name because no one knows how to pronounce it. The God's name is spelt YHWH, and a name whose pronunciation was lost thousands of years ago, but to which many suggest today you pronounce Yahweh. But for ease of understanding, we will continue to call their God, God, as that is what a majority of people refer it to as. So God makes a covenant with Abraham, in effect a religious agreement, promising him and his descendants a great nation, in effect offering him the whole land of Canaan, something that would be known as the Promised Land. And as part of this deal, God says that to prove their commitment to the covenant, every man must be circumcised. Some people refer to this as genital mutilation, and it does cause a lot of controversy today, as well as a fair few unnecessary deaths. So make of that what you will, as a request from a God. And as an aside, it was Paul of the New Testament who reversed the idea that every man needed to be circumcised to be a Christian. And funny enough, it was one of the decisions that made Christianity far more popular than Judaism. Well, that and opening up to women and children to join the religion. As you may not realise, but Christianity is after all a religion you join. Most pagan religions you can just walk into and out of, no need for baptism or confirmation, whenever you wish. But more about Christians and other videos as I digress, and I'll probably digress some more. But back to the story of the Torah. So Jacob, who was one of Abraham's sons, wrestled with God, or at least an angel, all night. And after this, Jacob was known as Israel, which means wrestle with God. And this would eventually give rise to the land of Canaan's modern name, Israel. And it would also influence the name of Abraham's descendants, who would be known as the children of Israel. Now, after this promise by God, the children of Israel found themselves prisoners of Egyptian slavery. And so God is currently 0 from 1 in providing the promised land. But come the 13th century BCE, Moses, one of the more famous children of Israel, led the children to the promised land, but via Mount Sinai, and it was there that Moses was given the entire Torah and the 10 Commandments. In fact, he was given 613 commandments, and these are known as the mitzvah. And in return for following God, God once again said that the children of Israel will live in the promised land. And eventually, after 40 years, Moses crosses Jordan into Canaan, meaning he has travelled at a speed of about half that of a garden snail. But on the positive side for him, Israel is formed, and for a moment, all seems good. And then one of the kings, King Solomon, builds a temple, the Temple of Solomon, and in there the Ark of the Covenant with the 10 Commandments is kept. And over a short period of time, Israel then splits into 2 territories. 10 children of Israel keep Israel, but 2 children, including Judah, would form the kingdom of Judah below it. So to summarise, 700 years after being promised it, the Jews then spend 600 years occupying the promised land. So at this point, God is now 1 for 2 in attempts to deliver the promised land. Although please consider that within those years, another 300 years pass while the Jews try to subdue the original occupants of Canaan. And then in 722 BCE, the Assyrian Empire conquered the promised land of Israel, leaving only Judah as a Jewish kingdom. And this led the Jews calling their religion Judaism. And God is now 1 for 3 in terms of delivering promised lands. And then in 586, the Babylonians defeated the Assyrian Empire and took over Israel and Judah and burnt down Solomon's temple and sent the Jews into exile out of the land that God had promised them. So now God is currently 1 for 4 attempts in delivering the promised land at this point in history, although in all seriousness this is an incredibly sad moment in Jewish history. But in 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great and his Persian army defeated the Babylonian Empire. And according to Cyrus, this was at the request of the Babylonian god Marduk. And God is now 1 for 5 in trying to deliver the promised land. However, Cyrus was about to do something that was extraordinary, and it would change history forever. So Cyrus introduced the first ever Bill of Human Rights. And this was found on something which is now known as the Cyrus cylinder, and it is a cuneiform inscription carved onto a baked clay cylinder about the size of an American football. And it was found buried in the foundations of the city of Babylon, and was thought to have been buried there after Cyrus captured the city. The inscriptions seem to allow the freedom of worship throughout the Persian Empire, irrespective of your religion, and to allow deported people back to their homelands. And this had huge implications for the history of religion. The Jews were allowed to return to Israel and Judea, and in allowing this, Cyrus is then praised like a Messiah in the Old Testament within the book of Isaiah. The Jews were so inspired by Cyrus and Zoroastrianism that the history of the Abrahamic religions was changed forever. It is only natural that if you're a small oppressed culture worshipping a god or gods that aren't delivering, and a larger, more powerful culture comes along and treats you better and gives you freedom, and has gods that have allowed them to acquire a huge empire, then you tend to adopt traits from that culture. You tend to want your gods to have the same successful attributes and traits as your saviour's gods. And this is something that has been repeated many times in history, and this is exactly what happened when Cyrus defeated the Babylonians and let the Jews return to their promised land. So what were these traits and attributes? Well, Cyrus and his empire followed a religion known as Zoroastrianism, or that is what we call it. It is known as Mazda Yasna by those followers of the religion, as they worship Mazda. And this religion and culture differed to others in certain ways. For one, it had magi. Now these were sorcerers. They had advanced astronomical knowledge for the time, and that would affect Greek philosophy, but also Jewish culture and the stories too. It was these magi who were to become the wise men in the nativity story for the birth of Jesus. They were said to have followed a star, a hint of their astronomical prowess, and brought gifts. But whilst we're here, we can knock another myth on its head, and that was that there were not 3 wise men at the birth of Jesus. The number of men is actually never said. They just brought 3 gifts: gold, frankincense and myrrh. And so it is assumed there were 3 wise men. But there could have been 2 or 20 or 666, which is also a mistranslation. As the earliest manuscript of Revelations, Papyrus 115, has the original and earliest recording of the number of the beast, and it's actually 616, not 666. But back to Zoroastrianism. Their religion story ends in a cataclysmic event, an end of days, and their main god had demigods or minor gods, things that weren't part of Judaism at the time. You see, the Jews picked up on these things to create the final judgment story in the book of Revelation, and the demigods became archangels within the Bible. And perhaps the most significant changes were the adoption of the Zoroastrianism's belief that there was an ongoing battle between light and dark, a conflict between truth and lies, and understanding their devil, named Angru Manu, was tricking people. And also, when people died, they would cross a bridge of judgment, and above them heaven, and below them hell. And heaven was a paradise of infinite bliss, and to go to hell was to suffer a long age of misery and darkness, bad food and crime woe. So your life's deeds are weighed on a scale of justice, and depending on which way it tips depends on where you'll end up. And before Cyrus and the Persians, there was no one creator God written in the Old Testament books, no archangels, no end of world story, and perhaps most significant of all, no heaven and hell, no judgment of death, no devil. Only after this time do we see the manuscripts that make up the Bible start mentioning these things, and from these Christianity and Islam are born and influenced. There is no doubt that Zoroastrianism, this pagan religion, a pagan source that itself has connections with the Proto-Indo-European creation myth from 6000 BCE, influenced the Abrahamic religions greatly, all due to Cyrus being forward thinking about how to treat his people. So the next time someone on social media tries to school you about Bibles influencing paganism, tell them the story of the Jews and Cyrus. But to finish this story, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this, come 70 CE, the Romans conquered Israel. God is 1 for 6 in delivering the promised land, and the country was lost again for over 1875 years, and that is until independence in 1948. And that was the story of the biblical heaven and hell, an idea taken from the pagans. So I hope you enjoy this story and the video. Please share it and comment up below or on Facebook if you want to ask anything or have any suggestions for other videos. I have videos coming up on Christianity and some on the Norse poems of the Poetic Edda. So I hope you look out for them. Subscribing is the best way, and clicking on the notification tabs below. Until then, I hope you stay safe and well. Please take care. And this was Crecganford.